All right, so yeah, we need to discuss that. So it's past 7 o'clock, so I call this meeting to order of codes and zoning. Before we get started, I need to make an amendment to the agenda. Passed out the 2 ordinances I got from planning. So I need to add both of those to our agenda. I get a motion to accept both the sign usage and fees and the land use definition table to our meeting tonight.
I'll make a motion. Accept those.
So with that done, we need to go for attendance. Lighthouse here, up here. We got that covered. So now we go to minutes from last month. Did Lonnie get that out to? I think that's an Amy thing there. Yeah, that was just going over.
Do you have something we need to look into, because I'm under the understanding that go for
okay.
Research.
Yes. Yeah, because I know you're ex officio because just like Amy is for budget finance.
I believe this is the only committee that I am, but I was told that.
Yeah. So yeah, so I will make sure that by the next meeting we've got a definition one way or the other on that. And that's taken care of. Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, so we'll go to the first part. Leslie, you got the cheat sheet. If you want to, David, and the binder over there beside you that I did, I went ahead and actually flagged. So for the utility zoning, I've had this reason I ended up having this December meeting. Had several requests to look at our utility zoning. And so I went and flagged everything that is pertaining to zoning that I could. Sam, if you run across one that I haven't, first one I've got is in the Hartsville zoning. Well, I've got R. See, and I found one here in R1, but it really is the same. And it's really for the administrative, for an administrative building, not so much the utility itself. We'll run across a couple of those. There's only a handful that I actually found that pertain to a utility. Use is permitted in the C1. It actually has it listed for C1. So couldn't find anything in residential as far as our zoning goes. And I believe there's C2 also. Trying to tag the agricultural use. The gist of it is we really don't have much of anything. Industrial use is permitted. There's nothing in agriculture. Oh, there is one. There is one I found in agriculture. The agricultural Article 5-25 down at the bottom. When you get into that section, flip over to 2.7 for the fifth one, essential services, and it lists specifically electrical, gas, water, sewer, distribution collection lines. pumping facilities for water, sewer systems, right of way, telephone switching. To me, looking at that, that's exactly where solar would fit. Dan, is that the way that you see that?
I would agree. Essential services talks about any utility operations.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, essential services falls under almost every single.
Yeah.
It's where they
Provide utilities. So
I guess we just need to decide, I don't know if it's up for us to decide if solar is an essential service.
well, if a utility's wanting to use it, then
so here
it would fall.
Here's to answer both your questions. So I provided copies of this to the attorney. You've got essential services, and let's just hypothetically say compensation.
Yeah.
You would look down at would be like secondary use.
Another reason how we're going to kind of start the meeting with this particular topic, I kind of want to, hoping the other two members were going to be able to be here so they can experience this, just how complicated it is to try to find something. And the more familiar we can get with the mess that we have in front of us, the easier it'll be to try to clean it up. Yeah. Well, it just should address solar farming in general. You know, where's that going to fall? It'd be nice to be able to throw everything we don't like over to industrial and just call it done. But I don't think we could do that. Yeah,
I got to talk about that.
and for the longest time, you know, Rick Gregory always told us there was really nothing you could do but make it look like a tree. You know, as far as utilities, you can tell them how to make it look, but I can't even find that in here.
Right, I found it. So it's right under essential services, number 5 there.
Okay.
And that's if you still matter going on.
The accessory use.
So when you look at accessory uses and structures,
So B27. Yeah. So
you read down through those and you'll see other accessory structures and uses customary incidental to the permitted uses.
Yeah.
So as long as the majority use of whatever it is that you're doing is one thing, you can add on to that onto something that helps with that primary use. So as long as it doesn't, it really, I believe it fall under board of Sonny Phil's opinion.
Yeah.
Whether it would flip to, let's see, the solar panels.
yes, that's
You're fine. Let's say the solar panels end up becoming larger than the pumping station. Then they can determine that the solar panels are now the primary use of the property, not the secondary use of the property. So,
and that's kind of where I'm wanting to go. I really, what we need to address tonight, one, is just kind of getting people, you know, everyone flipping through them and seeing, for Leslie, who doesn't get to flip through these as much as the rest of us do.
I have flipped through these a lot back in the summer when the quarry was
Okay.
so
an issue.
I'd like to bring up an example. Yep, flip, it's a chunk bag, but it's B3.
B3.
Yeah, towards the front. R1.
You could have a tag.
B3.
Okay, so if you look at the essential services, which is at the top of the page on the right hand side, look right underneath the accessory uses and structures.
Yeah.
Number 5, again, says other accessory structures, uses customary and incidental to the permitted use. So all the zonings have this, so as long as they can prove that it's a accessory use to what they're doing, they can have whatever.
And so, I guess the thing that I kept running into, it's the only reason I really took the time to bring it in front of us is something to look at. If we were to try to push, because then this is the problem I have. They're not a public utility, they're a private utility. They're a for-profit business. And the fact that they get treated differently than any other business is something I've always had a problem with. But I don't get to set those rules, that's federal and state stuff. But if we were to push, say, a private entity who wants to open a solar farm on their 30 acres, and we say, well, you can only do that in industrial. Okay, well, I'm an agricultural farm, I'm farming. I still got, sheep underneath it. Why can't I? Do we even have a justification that it creates no noise, it creates no obstruction? What grounds would the county have in a rural city? Granted, in the city, I can understand to a point, because somebody having it on a house in thoroughbreds having their roof solar panels will create just as much electricity as a farm sometimes. So I don't see
somebody putting it on solar panels on their house versus an 80-acre solar farm.
Yeah.
There should be a distinction there.
For what reason?
So I've looked into that exact situation, and I'm finding it personally hard to justify allowing any homeowner to come to me and decide that they want to go complete solar, which we have several that have done that, and telling a company that they can't do it. It's the same as anybody else.
You can do it for your own use, but you can't do it to make any money. But that's where I'm coming with it too, because we have to, anything we do on a zoning ordinance, we have to have a legal standing to do it. Is it going to decrease property taxes to the county? We can use that as a legal argument. I can't see that, because you would get taxed on what they produce. So there's actually more taxes coming to us. I can't find a legal standing to regulate this beyond what it already is on utilities. And that's my opinion. I'm asking for everyone's, because I want to take this opinion that we unanimously come to before planning, so planning understands what we've done, so that we have something then to discuss planning, and then we can, now we've got 2 committees taking information before we were asked to look at it by the mayor. I've looked at it. We're discussing it now. I don't see a legal standing, no matter, and especially at this particular, if we're looking at a particular current event with it, with proposal from where they're wanting to put it is actually in a basin. You have no view of it at all. You can't see it from any of the roads. So that's even more of a reason that's where you would want to put it, unless you're wanting to block it from all agriculture. Yes. Skyline Hospital has the whole side of the hill done with it.
That, in that case, there's no other use that you can do with that land where that solar is. Where there's nothing else you can do with that.
No.
And it's a solid use for land you can't use for anything else. I get that.
Yes.
But then again, we run into the situation. If they purchase a plan on it, we're telling them what they can and can't do with their property, and there's no justification to tell them they can't.
And I'm disagree with you at all. And I don't know enough about codes and zoning and laws. I don't know enough to argue this at all. I just know what the neighbors have said. So
I haven't been particularly asked all of things. I've tried. If you don't want something to come, you have to find the loopholes that allow us to make that happen. If you do want something to come, if our rules say we can do it, but right now I have not been told since they can't, the only thing is that section is the primary resource sector. And that would be something that bills would generally have to make a decision on primary or secondary. Now, there's several caveats that I don't think a lot of people actually think into. Is the federal government is pushing for solar. They're shutting down power facilities everywhere. They're pushing for solar. They're putting grants out there for solar for people to convert their houses over. And we're going to be actively pushing back against that for this project. If we do that, is there any legal means out there or any legal thing out there to stop that? That's a great question. Something the federal government has that is but then we go back to if they do own the property and they're allowed to do it for what we're seeing, then what justification do we have to stop them?
I could say as just a private citizen who owns property in Charleston County, there is that fine line in any zoning that we need to consider of, is that my property? And do I have a right to do with my property as I see fit? And I would make the argument in Tennessee, you don't own your property, you lease it from the state or the county you live in. Because the first time you don't make your property taxes, your lease payment, you can forfeit your property. So, I mean, you can have your mortgage completely paid off, but you don't pay your lease to the county. You don't pay those taxes and you lose it.
So I don't know if you're aware, we had a meeting for the compensation at the bank. Yeah, so it was heated. There was a lot of things. I made sure to ask a pointed question. Is this direct feed or is it not? They're not going to be feeding the grid for what they say. They're not going to be feeding the grid in any form or fashion. It's going to be direct fed power to their plant. And if that's the case, then you can arguably say it's accessory use because it's only there to their plant. They're not feeding the grid and getting pumped.
Yeah.
They're feeding the plant directly. That's my understanding. That's why they want to have their own substation so they can control their power that they're putting in. So every angle that I've looked at it, it seems like it's accessory use. They're supplying power, trying to offset the power drain on the grid. We allow homeowners to do it without any questions asked. Solar, it's the first business that was asked to do it.
Now, Sam, making the determination between secondary and primary, if the majority of the property is used for one function, could that sway it to be solar is now the primary because it's using the most acreage to do? And the pumping station then becomes the secondary.
I could say that is a very good argument that you could pitch, but there's other ways to get around it too. But their primary finding of their primary business is the pumping.
And if electrical still falls underneath essential services, it doesn't make a difference, correct? The solar is still electrical. If Tri-County was doing it, it would still be electrical for TVA.
I'm going to pull the lawyer card, baby. Because it doesn't specifically say that.
You know, the paper but so
yeah, the back
lines, yeah. But they backed out and do it.
Yeah. Like I said, I keep coming back to property owner rights versus betterment of the community. I can't find a legal way to show that it would be a reduction in taxes, whether it made a community less attractive or, you know, having solar. I can't find anything. If either of you or Sam, you seem to be kind of on the same page. If either of you can come up with any ideas,
discussion.
Yeah. So I guess I would entertain a motion of either at this point, we seem to all be talking the same way, so I guess it'd be a recommendation of no change coming out of this committee.
Based on my understanding at this point, they're allowed to do. In my position, I play both sides.
Yeah.
Looking at it from both angles, there's no good legal way of telling. I can see the arguments on both sides, and at the end of the day, when it ends up in front of a judge, they're going to say our primary money maker is the pumping station. So that makes their primary business pumping. The solar is it being direct feed is not any economic income for them.
So it becomes just another way for them to be able to do what they need to do, just as if they were running burying pipes to the pumping station. That would be secondary.
They wouldn't get too much out of it past week.
Yeah.
I mean,
and there's still going to be connected to the grid in some other fashion, just for days like this, or have huge batteries set up for storage for days like this. Unless it's only going to pump. My biggest thing is, and it has nothing to do with this. It's just, once again, I have to step away from chairman of just a conversation here. I hate the fact that we constantly have private for-profit gas companies coming through Trousdale County whenever they feel like it.
No benefit to the county.
To no benefit of the county at all. It's just a pass through because it's cheaper to come across the river in Trousdale than it is Wilson or something. And it kills, but there's not a thing we can do about it. There's not a regulation we can put in place to slow it down or stop it. So
that is, you see on the back of that paper, they give us something like that 2.7 million.
Yeah.
Tax.
We'll have benefit from this one if it goes through, if that's what sticks, that's just what they proposed. Highly convenient to me that it seems to be what our
property is going already. They already have the right one.
But I'd like to know where they came up, how they plan on producing that kind of property tax.
Well,
because
it was on there. I thought
I don't see how a solar farm on there is going, because they're not, like you said, they're not selling it, so we're not getting sales tax off. They're just
they want the incentives.
They said to me, that's something we can ask Mike Potts. They said the meeting was based off of how much land area they building where the project takes up. So if their solar farm's taking up 80 acres, so that's 80 acres of taxable.
they want 120. 80 for the solar and the rest of it for.
But my understanding is they're gonna buy the whole thing.
So do we get property tax off their pumping station they already have there?
We should, based on what they're saying at the meeting. It's based off of whatever structures that are there. So if they build,
but they don't own that land. So the brackets.
Yeah, but they've got the right of way there. They have a small pumping station there.
Yeah.
But they don't own it, so why would they? I mean, they just have a right of way.
Exactly.
The TVA, I don't know.
Yeah.
TVA doesn't have
But that kind of gets what. So I would entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one. If not,
I don't think we need to.
okay. Well, then we would do. No, it's just when we bring it up before planning, I'll just let them know that we couldn't find any legal reason to do any changes, so we did provide any. So that takes care of that. Let's go ahead and move over to the They do. They own that. So they own that portion of it.
Yeah, just
TVA owns?
Pull the tax right.
No.
Texas Eastern Transmission and CEO Rockers.
Texas Eastern. So
It's an Enbridge.
East Tennessee Natural Gas.
But the compensation sitting there right now, have up there.
Yeah.
It's got a tax card for it.
Okay.
There you go.
That's nice to know. At least we had something for us.
It's been very long as I can remember.
Well, if they want to buy it.
I'm 71, but 10,000. Well, I think it's like that.
We'll move on to the next item then. We'll start with the resolution to amend the resolution of Trousdale County, Article 5 by adding section 5050. This one is the plan use chart, the first one in your packet. And I was explaining to Ms. Overman earlier, we've got two of these. One is labeled as the resolution, and that is to go along with the current structure of the urban ordinances. They were all listed as resolutions when they were adopted. We've continued that. This is true. No, that was just an extra for this. Very fun. The reason it's labeled as resolution is just to match the other wording in the urban resolutions. When we get to the county part, it'll be listed as ordinance. That's the way the county did before we became a metro. So hopefully when we get done with the process of cleaning everything up, everything will be labeled as ordinance and you won't have the confusion between the two anymore. But this one, we kind of put together based on some of the conversations that came from the discussions of what does fit in a zoning, what doesn't fit in a zoning. GNRC and Sam worked really hard on this because you can see it covers everything listed in our current ordinances. And it's very well laid out. I personally, like I plan on laminating this to have it with me for any rezoning because it answers it very quickly and pretty concisely. The main thing we need to look at on this is if should be on the very first page of the table there, the whereas section. So let me correct myself on when you look at the attached table of uses and interpretation, when you come down to section B, this is what I really want us to focus on, because this is actually what happens if something doesn't fall. If you're doing something that's not on the chart, how do you decide where it goes? This is what the planning committee and GNRC, we kind of came up with this formula, and I think it's a whole lot better than what we have now, which is nothing. But this is what we're going to be pushing forward. I'll give everyone time to kind of look over that.
Sure.
Yeah, the second section here, B.
Basically, it doesn't show up on the list of uses, then it'll be sent to the board zoning appeals. The board zoning appeals will review the uses in AICS, which lists every single business out there to pick a proper zoning for that type of business.
And kind of the A, B, C, and D, E section of that kind of gives a flow chart of how that process would look like, what they would be using to make those decisions. So it doesn't leave it so open to interpretation. It gives them instructions straight from the commission on how that process should be done.
You know, eliminate.
I will see it. I'll see if that's in the budget to get done. Yeah,
that would be good. I mean, it would all go. We're going to use some of that. They're packing a lot of my bag here.
You wouldn't have to get a new one printed off there. Yeah.
Just come out here.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I wanted to look at on this from our side versus planning. So the way this is set up, and something we discussed in planning a little bit, every time we have a new ordinance come So if we set aside like for mining and zoning, which did get put in here, because we had passed that, we want to go ahead and have that done, so we are up to date. But if we were to bring something else, so like we decided that we did need special zoning for solar farms. And we passed an ordinance for solar farms. Okay, well, that's not going to be on the chart, but it is in the ordinance. So the process of updating this chart, planning doesn't really handle the logistical progress of that. That's kind of what we do on the commission side. So that's what I wanted to really, those two things are what I want to focus on. Is there any changes that we want to propose to the full commission as far as that goes? As far as instead of having to have an ordinance that you pass for the solar panel, for example, the solar farm. Okay, then you got to pass another ordinance to change this because this becomes part of an ordinance. Make sure that when we do one ordinance for that ordinance, in that ordinance, it's actually that we're going to amend this one at the same time.
I would like to know what the comprehensive plan is. The proposed use is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan is capitalized.
Yes, that's something we're supposed to be working in and planning. We were supposed to have started on that the last year of Mayor Chambers' administration. They were working on an overall, and then they were going to break it down into certain sections. Personally, I think that's taking way too long. We're already having issues that need these plans in place.
Who is working?
GNRC, I believe, wasn't it, Sam? Amy's already gone. She would know it better.
GNRC was asked to work on several things. Exactly which one is that priority?
Yeah. I believe you. I actually asked them to the representative to come to this meeting, just told no because it's beyond the two meetings that they're new agreements. Last year's contract didn't have a limit on meetings. This year's contract, they put a limit of just 2 meetings. They'll only come to 2 a month. And BCA. So as I'm trying to take some load off of planning so that planning can actually do planning by doing the ordinance stuff in here, this subcommittee, we kind of, she'll answer questions through email or phone, but she's not going to come to the meeting. So
is there another such organization?
I've talked to the mayor about that too, that I would like to look to see if there are other organizations outside. I know there is an association of planners that we on this committee can become a part of, and planning can, because we don't make our living off of it. It was like $163, and it's open. As many of us can be on that same, under that same price. It's the TAPA, the Tennessee chapter of the American Planning Association. That's where the video that I sent out to everyone, that's where that video came from. I really have enjoyed going through some of their videos training, because it's actually made up of people like Sam all over the state, not just around Nashville. It's everybody, and they're pulling in stuff from federal, from neighboring states. It's a lot of real life stuff that they've had to deal with. So that's something I'd like to look at us getting an open membership to that, so that we can all have access to all that information. I think the more training we can all get, the better off we can serve the county. And those videos just make it convenient to be able to get it at our leisure versus having to take time off full-time jobs for that training.
So with that said, we don't have a comprehensive plan.
At the moment, our comprehensive plan expired. See, we had a 20-year plan, and I want to say it expired somewhere in the mid-2000s. I was actually very surprised looking through it. Mayor Chambers gave me a copy of it. It was very accurate as far as where our growth would be about this time, where that growth would be in the county. I was really blown away at the accuracy. But it has not been updated, and it drastically needs to be, because now we're growing faster. And so we really need that plan in place. Part of that also is a zoning plan for the county, so that when rezonings come, we have a locked in plan that the commission has voted on as an ordinance. This is what we're gonna do. This is the law of zoning for Trousdale County. And when rezonings come, they either fit into the plan or they don't. And that kind of helps with when we refuse to do a rezoning, we now have legal standing for that. And that plan, once again, can go back to, we did this for the betterment of the community, that increases revenue to the county, and we have a legal right to do that under that.
It also helps to, if we have an active moving plan, developing plan, then people like Tommy and his counterpart has experience and say, hey, this is all potentially commercial. This is all potentially dense residential. And they can go ahead and make their own 20-year plans on increasing those line sizes and supers and all that stuff.
To my understanding, the water department already has their comprehensive 20-year plan in place, which as we, as a county, develop our overall, needs to take that into consideration of what they're already planning on doing, so that we kind of can follow along. If we need to tweak things, that's fine, but I think that's a part which Heather Bay is the chairman of the water board. She's now on planning, and I really plan on picking her brain. Of course, Tommy's willing to come in anytime we need to have any information from him. In future discussions, I've reached out with Jeff Congress. She did things we hadn't even thought at all. It's great. I've asked Jim Carmen to step in when we start going through some of the rezonings. He deals with it. He seems to be an honest player as long as I've known him. And so when we get to that part, I'll talk more about that. Back to what's ahead of us, because I have a tendency to go down rabbit holes myself, just to try to keep on track so we're not here all day. Going through this, is there anything else? I mean, that's why the planning, is plans listed, because in the future there should be one, and no sense having to leave it out. But yes, I'm sure when the full commission comes up, that question will be asked, and so I'll have to explain that once again to them also. But is there anything else? I mean, anything in the process with the BZA that you see that you don't like wording, or think the wording should be more aggressive? Or I thought it was pretty well thought out. The fact that they give you kind of a step by step there of how that should go, kind of gives direction straight to BZA. Kind of focuses them a little bit and kind of gives them a lane to stay in. I know sometimes that can be difficult. You just kind of throw general things out there. It's consistency of judgment sometimes wanes a little bit
According to the county pilot, they're tied to the
yeah.
That.
Yeah. But they actually have legal authority that planning doesn't have.
So the way this written, before zoning appeals that we're seeing it's no longer, it'll be partial opinion, but it also have them guidance. They have to follow that North American Industrial Classification System. So they have to look at that and find where it best fits. Yes, they will have a portion of opinion in there, but they still have to follow this guideline. So it's not as loose as they've been operating at the moment. It actually puts more legal safety net in there, because they're actually following something that is bigger than just Trousdale County.
And it doesn't tie their hands at the same time.
Yeah.
So if no one's seen anything on the Hartsville side, we'll move over to the Trousdale side, and as you'll notice on the front page, it lists as an ordinance number, back to what I was talking about earlier. This one is really the same thing. It just lists the difference in the zonings. And I think this will kind of help us as we go to try to combine, as I was talking with you before, instead of having a Hartsville and a Trousdale, you have the Metro Hartsville Trousdale zoning ordinances. And then we can separate that out by the classifications. Start with the urban first, and then build upon that with our numbering system. As we get further out to the county, it becomes a little less restrictive. That way, when someone looks at something, the lower the number, the more restrictive, the higher the number, further out, the less restrictive, further out the counties, no matter what zoning you're referring to. We kind of get into industrial. We really have just the I-1. We don't really have an I-2, do we? Because you just go I-1 and then it goes straight to M1. You don't really have a degrees of industrial. So that'll be a little easier to deal with. But there are some variant. You'll see there's things that are allowed in some, like with commercial. A lot of people complained about having a meatpacking plant in town. Why did it go out to TBA where we had plenty of property and it's not in the middle of town? Well, because the current zoning wouldn't allow it. The only place the meatpacking place was allowed was in the urban district. They were prohibited from being in the county. And that was one of the things that blew my mind looking into it. When I found that out, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So the guy wanted to be out at TBA. He had no problem being. They were going to sell him the land there just the same price they were going to pay. He didn't want any of the problems. He was just doing what he had to do to be able to get the business in Trousdale County. And that way he could get the government assistance because he had to be in a rural area in order to get the federal grants and stuff to get things going. And you can't blame him. It's not his fault. It's completely us as a commission not keeping these things up to date when we made the merger. Because I'd much rather have a meatpacking plant out in the county when you got, that's where the cows are.
Yeah, but you just don't know it's being out there.
Exactly.
I haven't done it.
But up it runs.
I run by it almost every day.
I'll go by them yesterday or day before yesterday.
Unless you see them
It's just
dropping off the cows, you don't know it's meat plant. There's nothing to.
And they unload. They got a certain amount of cows gonna come in. They back on the inside and they put it inside.
Yeah,
everything. Yeah, are different here.
And unless you're actually watching them on the road,
Unless you see the truck back up.
Yeah.
You know.
which is what he promised us.
I believe they have a time limit from, what's it?
Yeah.
They have time limit.
And the
how long-
EPA both.
How long the cattle can stay outside. So they have to, once they hit the ground, they got to start processing.
Yeah. I've been by there. I don't go there a lot, but anytime I've ever been by there.
Yeah.
They're all, they got what it's about. Back.
So back to the discussion of the merger zoning tables. So of course we got A1, we've got R1, we've got R2 in both the city and the county. In the city we have an R3, which makes sense because you're super. That's super. It's residential. The I-1 that you see in the city, that's your general industrial stuff, which is what apparently meatpacking place and the paper company. And then we've got in the county we have the general industrial and the intermediate impact industrial, which that's going to be the larger industrial stuff down there. So combining these together is it seems substantial from the outside until you get really digging into them. 90% of the work is exactly the same. The only difference is you've got zoning differences. And like David was saying, once you move outside of the city limits and make that hypothetical, county boundary, it'll move into the districts for those areas. They can be finally get a zoning plan down. They could be in the plan for those areas.
But I really saw an issue with going to be commercial. And I think by creating a C3 commercial zoning, it fixes that because you've got the the one that really kind of throws the wrench in it is the C1 in the urban. Because you've got C1 in both, but they're completely different.
So the county one will really become C2.
Yeah.
So everything that's C1 in the county now will flip to C2, which is a different shade of brand. It's the exact same thing as what's in the city. So the C1 that's in the city just allows multi-use residential and commercial. If that's something that I'm pursuing to change, so that might that's going to be loose. So whatever I say right now, just keep open. It's going to be loose because the state of Tennessee is pushing for multi-use. So all your
If you're playing here, sort of.
yeah, all your commercial areas that have access to sewer and all that stuff. Why not allow a strip mall to go in, but also allow townhomes above? You know, you're doubling down on that square footprint. So you're not taking up as much land and property. So they're trying to push more for counties across the state to just allow it. If somebody wants to do it, allow them to double down on it. Which is allowed it's allowed down towards courthouse area, but we really don't have a lot of property that anybody can actually do that on. Most everything really look in depth in the Travis County, most everything has shifted up to 25. We got sewer up here, we've got water up here, we have huge infrastructure up here. So why has C1 not floated up this way?
At the same time, the 144 starting next year, when it wraps around, it's going to push more commercial out that way too.
The sewer's already there.
Yeah, water, sewer, gas,
And you've got
all the way to the after the break.
you've got two big property lots right across from each other that are going to be really walking distance to that. That would be ideal places for mixed use properties. And commercial and residential right in the same areas. With 22 acres there at Starlight, it's which one's that? It runs beside Goose Creek.
It's Laddie Reese and you got Laddie Reese and Starlight coming right beside those.
And then you've got on the other side that wraps around the historic house, you got that whole field there. Both of those are just prime development property. The 22 acres sold for like what, $1.2 million this summer. I mean, for 22 acres. I mean, come on.
So here's the purple, the deep purple down here. That's the Newton line. So the Newton line's down here. This, just give you reference. So that is, make sure I'm right here before I out. So, yeah. So the school, the elementary school is right here. Yeah. So right past the elementary school, when you get over that little bridge, all that becomes dense residential. So that's all that is R2 all the way down to it. So
It's already part two.
all of that, all the way down to the county line.
So you can already run townhomes on.
Yeah.
It's already zoned.
You can do duplexes and multiple duplexes, chop them up in really small.
You're talking about
lots.
the cost.
Once you cross Goose Creek going east,
Yeah, that.
both of those on either side, those big, empty
What
lots.
else coming fluid? One
Uh,
right,
Well, actually, the one on the right isn't listed in the floodplain, is it?
Right as you get over the bridge,
put on the corner.
Yeah,
right as you get over the bridge, about half of that is in the flood, and it goes down to right where that road comes in, that the road that nobody knows there.
Yeah.
Right in front of 10.
yeah, where they're gonna be coming across.
Yeah, so it goes down to right there, but you're talking
The whole front of that to the road is all.
500 acres in every direction with R2.
That road probably to the left. Okay,
That wraps around the historic,
4 or 5 million, I think. Keep
Why?
because of where it's located.
where it's located. I sits up, it's no flood, nothing. So,
Are you picturing where we're talking?
Oh, yeah.
So
It's got a river on the back.
Bradshaw,
you got,
down. No Bradshaw Farms.
I believe he does. I was looking at that the other day. But yeah, you got Goose Creek that runs across the back of it. It has a grade above the road. So, I mean, the views from up there, I would imagine on a 2-story building would be phenomenal. I mean, you'd be above. I mean, you'd be almost the same level as what the elementary school sits.
I've seen water come across that other thing.
Yeah.
Right, but that's across me, turn that, they
Yeah.
raised,
Yeah.
I think water stays down there.
Perhaps on that.
But I could see a developer being able to put berm there along Laddie Reese and direct the water on down. And that would take a lot of his out.
I mean, we already allow for slip buildings.
Yeah. Well, and that's the limit though, correct?
Yeah.
But that's the height limit in Trousdale County, it's a 3-story building.
It's 36.
Unless our fire department, but. Okay. Different, what it called.
All right, so
I,
Go down the fire department.
that's another committee. That's another committee. So,
you can go.
so
January
but now-
15th.
But they're all hard headed though.
with the discussions, if anyone see any changes, any word changes that you would like to see to present to the full body? Of course, anything we do here, I will. Yeah, will be a recommendation. I would take the wording and forward both to Brandon for his approval. His suggestions before we would push it onto the full commission.
Now, the fee schedule and the.
That's separate.
That's separate.
That's
Okay.
the next.
I would like to have, I hope that everybody agree, if you receive something from us, you know, from whoever it's come from, and haven't thoroughly, you feel like you have thoroughly reviewed. I know there's a lot.
Yeah. We'll meet again before the information comes through.
So I want this to pass as soon as possible. It help me out, but I don't want it to pass without everybody's eye. So if you're not comfortable, then all we gotta do is vote to table it.
We still have 2 other members who aren't here, but I'm just asking for the direction of what.
I mean, I'm good with this. I'm good with recommending it to the full commission so that the full commission can look at it and make a decision on it.
Well, I'll entertain a motion. That's
Well, there you go.
okay.
Make one thing on your chart. Everybody smarted. Put up there a little square. What can't be. What?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
They did put that at the.
Somewhere on there where people figure out.
Yeah.
It's down at the very bottom of it, which makes it for it to be in the beginning instead of the end, but it is at the bottom.
And that's merely just the way it'll be, we can change that just in the way it gets posted into the book.
Yeah.
Just take that section, put it to the top of it, which. Yeah.
What each one of them will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
But
everybody,
it's in the wording.
everybody wants to see it at the bottom.
Exactly. And then they'll think it's not there, and I agree.
They'll go, one thing, I don't know what's both. What's that thing?
Yeah, so section A in the table of use interpretation is.
You see what he's talking about? Sam,
Yes, it's at the bottom.
Yeah. I mean. So when we go to actually, cause you still have the digital copy, that's just a cut and paste to that, correct?
But he's wanting to move it to the front of the table.
Yeah.
I mean, all you have to do is move that one line, that PE equals permitted in SE, especially.
Exactly.
Just move that up under the very top.
Under the Harts Funded District table, just
Yeah.
center.
Yeah, so that one line, you would just move up to, where it says residential,
Right.
you put it right, residential would get moved down, you just put it right in there.
Mhm.
And then it would start, and so there's your key at the top, and leave it at the bottom, have it both ways, because it's 2 separate pages. And put it on both sides. Just so that, like you said, in generations to come, it makes it easier for everyone. And I don't, that really doesn't need anything beyond a suggestion that I think that's a great idea. And it's one less thing to call someone to balk at. I think that's a great idea. All right, so with that suggestion being made, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Second, all in favor of sending it on to the full commission after Brandon takes a look at it? Aye. All right, well, that one's done. All right, so the next one's got a little more discussion about it. Because things came up in finance that we didn't deal with in planning because, well, planning doesn't set fees and planning doesn't, set those sort of things. We can only provide the idea, the amounts that you see here in the fee chart. Those are just stuff, they're just stand-in fees. If I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't raise anything on these fees, correct? These are all what already existed.
The fee chart, the only fees that we have currently is the zoning application. We had no fees on anything else.
And so everything else was just kind of following along, just kind of a standard.
Yes, the step system.
Yeah. So those can be adjusted. And I think, I don't know what we want to recommend, or if we just want to send it as it sits to finance.
Fees.
Yeah, but
Surrounding counties?
No,
they're higher in other counties.
way higher.
Like I said, these were just minimum placeholders. So there was a fee associated.
So when we were looking at fees, we didn't want to hurt anybody. We wanted to cover costs. So the planning commission currently and the board of appeals currently is not receiving enough money to cover costs. Generally, with planning commission, we're gonna have 4 things tonight, depending on what it is. Once you add it up, let's just hypothetically say that cover newspapers and all. It's being sort of before we weren't receiving any money.
The rezonings that were constantly coming to us, and they are coming at a faster and faster pace, we're becoming a burden on the taxpayer. This takes that burden off the taxpayer and puts it on the person who's wanting the rezoning, who's going to benefit from the rezoning.
You might want.
I mean, I would think that you would explore what the surrounding counties are charging and at least match that.
Well, at the same
I
time,
mean, Sumner County obviously is a little bit different, but maybe Smith County and Aiken County explore what they're.
the other thing
They're
that they were discussing.
They don't charge fees.
They have like zoning fees and stuff like that. They don't have
Smith County don't have.
the-
full comprehensive plan that we're trying to propose where each individual thing is charged a certain fee.
You would have to look towards a Sumner County. Or
I'm actually helping make it update their codes.
But I like that. My idea of making even higher. Slow thing,
well, and
making slow things down.
that being said, sitting in on the finance committee this week, finance is actually looking at, do they need to start raising, do we need to raise, it can be raised, is what I texted you about the impact fees.
I mentioned that.
They were aware that we were proposing this, has gotten any, it's just now coming out of planning. And so what my concern was that if they jack the impact fees up, and we put this on top of it. And so it slows things more than we anticipated. I'd like to see the commission be able to look at this and do a combined, because all of it's going to the general fund. If I'm not mistaken, impact fee doesn't go to any one particular thing anymore, correct, Sam?
Legally, it's supposed to.
Yeah, it just goes into the general fund.
It's something that I believe was supposed to be looked into and get fixed, but I don't know where that went.
And I don't either, honestly. I haven't heard any more about that. And that might be something that we take up down the road.
I did propose that the fees stay within the scope of my office in one meeting.
Yeah, these fees, yes, I would agree with that. That's the whole purpose of them, is so that it takes the pressure off of your budget. The impact fee, on the other hand, I could see that going more towards capital improvements, helping pay for the prison, helping pay for a new school.
Paying for police officer,
Exactly.
school bus.
Things that are directly impacted by the growth. That's why you pay
Because
the
all
impact
this
fee.
road don't have school buses.
So-
And pictures,
So
police officers.
back to the impact question, Macon County just passed for. We hear a lot of active contractors, for what they just passed, but it is a very good way of doing this. We have the same thing that they just did, we have for commercial right now, where we charge per square foot instead of just a, 1,500 to a certain point in per square foot, but that per square foot would have very low. We could just get, we could leave the minimum in there at 1,500, and then, like I said, let's say $1.50 per square foot, which
We have that for residential also, up to a certain level.
it goes up to, probably, that's like 2,300 square foot house. Build that, so yeah,
Once you go over that, it grows exponentially. The larger development you're doing, the more you're going to pay.
So if you did $1.50 a square foot, a 2,000 square foot house would be $3,000.
But the builder,
Instead of a $1,500
builder, yeah,
so hypothetically,
was it owned to grow or?
It really hasn't slowed because that's been in place now for what, 5 years? And in fact, remember the white adjusted that.
it went up by $500. It was $1,000.
So it didn't slow down. Now we got a bump in building permits right before it went into effect. Intelligent people thinking, well, I can buy my building permit now 3 months ahead of time to not have to pay it. But overall, it really did increase some of the revenue coming into the county. It was quite a jump.
Mr. Beasley,
Yeah.
We're
a bunch of building permits. But
so the one thing that came up was, so the way this reads out, so this is just your fees here. And so your rezoning application fee, if you'll notice, it's listed as, you also pay on top of that fee, you pay $100 deposit for a sign. What this is proposing is that now signs will be an ordinance. Every property that is rezoned that has a plat amendment or a site plan will have it posted. And this puts it as the responsibility of the property owner to post the sign. Now, it came up in the executive committee, and I don't think we fully addressed this in planning, Sam. Yes, you'd be the one to make sure that the sign got put out, but how do we do the enforcement on that? And then that's what they kept at. The executive committee was asking, we give that any thought?
There's a whole lot difference of making drive by.
Yeah.
And seeing the signs there. It's taking 45 minutes to use mineral spirits to change what it says on the sign.
Well, and they weren't really talking so much about that. It's okay. So you drive by, make sure the sign got put out. Yeah. Oh, it's supposed to be.
It's what happens.
Yeah.
It's that if it disappears.
Yeah.
I believe it actually say on the set.
Who's gonna enforce that? Who's gonna enforce that? You drive by and see that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And then something happens a week later, but it's still supposed to be up.
And then what's the recourse against the property owner for not having it still?
So it actually says this one here.
but there be people, they prepared that.
Well, I mean, the example was the
Or the neighbor, they had their sign up and the neighbors don't want the quarry, so the neighbors.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the neighbors took the sign down, but they would have,
as an example.
Right.
Yeah.
As an example.
As an example.
Right.
The neighbors don't like what's coming in, so they take the sign down, trying to stop the rezoning process. The cost of having to investigate who is the one we expect cameras posted at each sign. So how do we do that? And
But now, you're saying that you drove by, you saw it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Comes up this. Boy.
Yeah.
Well, it was not owner's fault. It was there, but Sam saw it.
at the same time, I guess what they were getting at is, are we gonna have something in here that requires the property owner to report the sign missing? Right. So that everything stays on the up and up.
So, that I know there is a section on here, but it talks about it, the sign where they made up, if this were made up, that they, are
And then that was the other
off
thing.
from the next.
So let's take the flip side of that same scenario. The quarry gets their sign. They don't want anyone to know a quarry's coming in because they don't want people complaining
Right.
about it. They post the sign and he drives by and sees it.
They take it down.
They take it down. They're the ones who take it down. What recourse then happens to the property for not having the sign posted?
That's what I'm looking for, because I believe that if the sign doesn't remain up, then they get, removed from the next meeting.
And that was my understanding is what we discussed. I hadn't seen it, in here. And so I didn't know if that was something we discussed, never got wrote down.
Anyway, back to the, I was correct, it's roughly a 2,200 square foot house, with the 1,500 that we have set now, anything over that, it goes 76 square foot. So, let's, if you even made it $1 a square foot, 2,000 square foot house, now $500, it is now.
I think once again, I think this is another one that is it's a very good ordinance. I think just a little bit of,
I think we just left out the paragraph, it's,
yeah,
I've read it.
I know we had a motion to approve that being added. I just don't.
We do it Monday night if you have the wording, and then it can come back before us at the next.
That way,
In
GNRC can get the wording correct.
Yeah.
I can take that, take this back to them.
I'll make a motion to send this back to planning.
All right. Have a second. Yeah. All right. All approve?
Aye.
Yeah. So we'll take this back to planning. We'll get that added or sorted out. And then bring that. But I think it really does. It fixes all the community's complaints about why weren't there signs posted? Why didn't I know? This puts it there, and it's 15 days before the first time it comes to planning. So you think about that. That's 2 weeks before it comes to planning. Then another week before it goes to work session to talk about. Then it's got to be, it's 2 readings. Third one being held on the same week of the other.
It's basically every 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, you're throwing out almost 2 months there of, actually 2.5 months that it's posted. So if you say you didn't know about it, well, you weren't paying attention, and that's not on us. We did our.
And the signs that I designed, I still have them up on my computer. You can't miss them. They're right.
Those were we decided they were 2 foot by 2 foot. The greater one.
Yeah, and they're purple and gold. I mean,
were you able to be able to put what was on top versus on bottom? Were you able to make that change?
I can't find a stand that has those 2 different arms.
Really? Because realtors use those all the time.
There's a stand out there that has 3 pieces, or a little one, and we buy those. More expensive. I can't find one that's just one.
We have a really good fab shop out at Tri-Metal. That might be something we talk about contracting to have them make up a couple of things. Because it wouldn't take them a day to churn out, probably 6 or 7.
Yeah.
That actually might be, and that kind of keeps the money right here in the county.
You got 2 fab shops.
Yeah.
People, you don't want to try that.
It's angle wire. It's small. L-shaped iron.
But they could probably get it made and get it powder coated.
Mhm.
And probably be just, and then be made the way you need it to be. Because I did agree, and I think that was one of the motions that came out of planning, is that we wanted that to be on top. So you knew it was a rezoning, you knew it was a site plan across the top of the sign versus at the bottom.
Absolutely.
And then the sign itself is just a notification of an event that's happening. Top tells you what kind of event it is happening.
Yeah, because the big portion is just, it's a standard format for everything. That one strip says site plan zoning, you know,
And it had the date.
and it has date on it. They have changed the big portion is, you know, Travis County government contacts them and if they have any questions about what.
So, yeah, that's.
See if I haven't tried to make the printing for us, and then have the website that we found to do the printing for us. And so then if your sign isn't damaged, bring it back, you get your $100. You know, you're good. Sign gets damaged, cost you $100 and you go buy another sign. And that way, the cost is always transferred to the property owner, not the taxpayers.
And the sign only costs $100.
The ones that we had found were just 100. Now, if it changes, we might have to change that deposit to match the cost of the sign. And it looks like it might, or then again, Tri-Metal might be able to do it and save us a couple. $100 be just fine.
Again, I'm not trying to gouge people, I'm trying to make sure they can help.
Well, exactly, but if it's $100 now, who knows what it'll be next year,
It's price level.
you know?
Price level is high.
Right,
Well, and then
Also,
exactly.
every couple of years, we'll have to make an adjustment on that, which we should be doing anyway, just to try to stay.
cause I talked to one guy in the back who makes, tornado shelter. Back at home, you know, like, it's not like price. Just like that, gone up again.
I would probably, if it costs $100 right now, I would probably say, okay, well, let's start at 150, and then we don't have to edit this for.
Well, once we get down, now that we have, this discussion, I think we can get that figured out before our next meeting.
Yeah.
And then we can bring this back up at that point with that information. Go ahead and we as a subcommittee can kind of fill in that, you know, adjust that one. And then that gives,
They won't
then we can
change
do
the development of that property bank money.
Yeah.
So 150 don't see that.
and I think, listen to y'all's discussion on it. I think after we get done with it, before it goes to the full body, we need to send it over to finance and kind of let them discuss along with their ideas of the impact fee and try to come to an understanding of how you want those to match up before it goes before the full.
I would like to streamline it a little bit. I know it needs to go to the committee, but it doesn't need to take 3 or 4 months.
It should, we should get this squared away in the information. We'll do it once we add the information to it on the January meeting, vote on it there. Hopefully we'll have our other 2 members present. They'll get to look at it. I'm gonna go ahead and get Lonnie and Mr. Welch, try to get them the packets that I added tonight.
We knew who you meant.
To get Mr. Belcher, the information, try to get him, his book, so that when he comes, he can be kind of caught up. Hopefully they'll be able to watch the video and kind of at least see the discussion, read the minutes, and be able to jump right in with us. The other thing I wanted to discuss, is I want to, really go into the combining of, for this month, I want to be looking towards January, how we're going to combine residential. Like Sam was saying, I don't think residential is going to be hard to do. I think it's going to blend very easily. There are some things that we're going to have to look at that's permitted or not permitted in an urban versus rural. I think instead of trying to squeeze it all into one, Sam, what do you think of this? The idea that was pitched to me by Jim was to do an extra zoning. And it might shift some of the county stuff up, as far as an R1, R2, R3. But though, that way you have, like I said, as the number goes up, you have the more restriction. And you can start in your R1. That's okay, that's your urban, and then that's a little less restrictive out in the county. That becomes your R2, and then your more dense becomes your R3, and then your apartments and whatnot would then become R4. That was his suggestion.
I agree on principle, and Tim and I talked about it as well. That is something that potentially can happen. I think we would only potentially add one more zoning district, but I believe once we get in here and get to digging and start mushing things together, we might not have to.
Yeah.
I
know we're going to have to do it for the commercial. So I haven't dug in fully into R1 yet too.
So like I said, everything in the county currently that says it's C1, that's a simple clerical change. You just say now it's C2, period. And everything that's here that's C2 is the exact same thing that's allowed in the county needs. So all that meshes together, making it C2. The C1 is already its own zoning district, which I think needs to expand outside of the old historic district and move up to our already developed 25 strip. Trust County should really look in like a T shape with its commercial. And because we have our sewer here, our C1 should follow that, which would allow the multi-use sewer there.
So you're talking about running from the T, you're talking about running it up from the courthouse at Main Street, running it up Broadway and spreading out along.
Yes, yes. So, and that's pretty much the way it's set up now. It's just right down here at Goodyear is where C1 stops. Really weird area for it to stop, but that's where it stops. And then at C2 the rest of the way. Well, we're fully developed along 25 in our strip here. And we're fully developed all the way down there. But C2 really, or C1 should come up here, and then we just have to decide when we do our zoning map and our plan on how far we want that to expand. And really, you can hypothetically say that everything that is C2 in the city currently is already planned to be commercial and already has super owned, so you could just flop that to the C1. And then the C2 is in everything in the county.
Yeah. Yeah. From the original.
So all commercial in the city limits can hypothetically we could say C1, and then everything in the county currently that C1 turned to C2. So that would be our difference between the city and the county is the C1 is multi-use and anything that has sewer on it. So once we lose sewer, it's now C2.
I think as you do that T and it comes up, I'd kind of like to see it more as an L. So it ends up being like a U shape. So you come from the courthouse area, from River Street over to Broadway, everything up Broadway. When you get to McMurray, then you kind of have that between red light to red light. Because then once you start going out beyond that, now you're starting to get into a little more touchier, established subdivisions, thoroughbred, even out, with going all the way out to Royal Elm, out that way, even past my own. Now you're getting a little more dense. You're further out. You're not in that dense core. You're further out into the.
What about the streets like where you turn there by Richmond Service Station? What you call Richmond? That's what that street. You got houses. You have folks. Turn upside the bank in the gas station.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, across the big wig. Go up that street.
Oh,
the houses. Take the houses out, turns into commercial property. Would that be C1, C2?
C1 would allow that. If it is C2, which it's not all that.
Is it already there? Probably the sewer there.
There's sewer.
There's sewer there. But if let's hypothetically say that in that strip, all of that was turned to C1, expanded out to a certain distance, anything that falls within that could be residential or commercial. It doesn't have to be both. McDonald's can get bulldozed and a house can go there. It's, you know, both can be allowed there. Right now, we've got this entire strip right here is houses. Technically, they shouldn't be there, based on our zoning.
Technically, that should all be commercial according to the main through. Where I said something to it one day about
You're talking behind Daly's there up the curve, filled with Misty
Yep.
Maples.
the old
Property there.
the old Wagner place.
Yeah.
Been here a long time.
Yeah, we're still a little younger, David. You have to give us.
I think I was when that one was.
But anyway, it's close to the town. You know what an over 55 is. Most of them ride around in little cars.
Is
They
that
go down.
R3?
I mean, it
It can be commercial.
it could be anything but C2.
I think right now it's currently zoned agriculturally. Or no, because the hospital
farm.
came in.
Portion of the front towards
Is commercial.
Bailey's is commercial, and then the rest is
I know the hospital was gonna go there and they did some rezoning.
the majority of it's agriculture.
Still need to go.
There's 3 zoning districts.
On one property. But
But
and
that's
he's still in discussions that I
So,
It is, but the way we've got it now with C2, residences aren't allowed in C2. Period. That's why everybody's coming forward and asking for rezoning. It's down to 25 because residences aren't allowed in C2. Now, as I was saying, if we move the C2 to C1 where residences are allowed, then it could be either or on the main thoroughfare. You know, and you just do like the same thing that we've got C2 set up now. It's just in that specific strip, you know, and we're requiring all the subdivisions to maintain the commercial on the front anyways. And when the cottages came forward, we actually made that a requirement and agreed to his plan that his commercial lots on the front would be dual use.
Yeah.
But
Well, moving forward.
the cottages, it is, he's waiting on the interest rates. If they drop right down.
if I'm not mistaken on his, he's doing the strip mall across the front. So that property was commercial and then behind it, so he's not actually doing residential on top of that commercial.
That was the plan.
Okay,
The residential come off the back. And they have parking
Yeah.
areas in the back, on the back, but if they're above. The commercial units below would be the same owner to the one that above.
okay. The way I saw the drawings, it looked like the
I
front,
forgot all about that.
yeah, the front was all gonna be just one level. That was the commercial, and then there were houses behind it. So they were actually separate buildings.
No, that,
Yeah.
that strip in the front was all dual use. It's a strip mall in the front, so you see all the bike stores and everything. And you see glass windows at the top that their access is from the other side.
South of the park, you're across the street.
Yeah.
All day.
And it makes it, if you really think about it, it makes it more feasible for small business owners. If it's like the lady that owns the clothing store here, I don't know the names, but
Did the boutique across from Marathon.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so or heck, the Yellow Jackets nest. I don't know if everybody knows Rivers, but they can move into a unit and they have their commercial space downstairs and they live above. So they're paying, it's more economic for them. It's all one bill for them. So for small business owners, it's a lot more.
My small business.
Side food land is big, another. That restaurant.
Yeah.
They got the beer license. Beer license.
I think it's supposed to be
Japanese.
Yeah, it's hibachi.
Hibachi, Mexican.
it's Mexican hibachi.
And I think at this point, he's decided to keep the Mexican at the grilled cheese and just watch it there. The last conversation. But you can see how it's a daunting task because of the size of it, but like anything else, we take it off at one piece at a time. My plan is that, okay, so we look at this month. We've already got another meeting scheduled the first week of January. That gets us like 3 weeks or so. In January, in that meeting, we'll go over how we're going to combine and actually come up with a rough draft of what that looks like.
And we need to study R1.
Yeah, or your residential zone.
Any one.
And so, yeah, in the two, and how we want to combine those. And then so that when we're done with the January meeting, residential is, here's a rough draft of what that's going to look like. That'll go to planning. Then what we'll do is, to prepare for the February meeting, we'll take up commercial. And we'll be looking at those. So while planning is looking at our residential, we'll be working on the commercial. And then so on, so that we're not waiting for one to get done before we start another. We're sending it on out. So that by the time it gets to Brandon's office, it can all be collected, it can all be reviewed, and then it can go before the full commission as a package. Now, in doing this, Sam, and I really need to hear a little bit of conversation from you on this, and Mr. Nolder, how you think about this. So there are certain businesses that actually have no regulation in Charleston County. While we're doing this, I think would be a good time, without bringing any attention to said businesses, to go ahead and put in any regulations, any zonings we need to do for those businesses, because it's going to go through all the chambers that we need to look at. So that when it gets voted on, it's acknowledged that yes, there's an ordinance here, ordinance so-and-so number, for everyone to review and how what they want to do with that, and then vote on it as a solid package. So everything is to the light of day. Here's everything. We're not hiding anything, but we're not publicizing and bringing attention to holes in our zoning for entities to take advantage of before we have something in place.
So I'm aware of what you're asking. I just want to make sure I've got this straight so I don't have to approach this.
Yeah.
While we're going to go ahead and push the chart table of uses to county commission, let me go ahead and approve it.
That's a separate, yeah.
And then while we're working on fixing the ordinances, combining them, there is a lot of things to be recorded anyways.
Yep.
You're saying that we need to add those uses into the proper areas inside the ordinances, it's changes, and then go back and change the chart.
Yes. Any changes that would be done would then be, so when you accept what we have, it would also change the chart, just like we said that anytime an ordinance is passed, it would also reflect an ordinance to amend said chart. In that order. So when we pass this, any changes that the full commission agree upon to ordinances, they're also agreeing to change the chart to reflect that.
I should be, I think GM said they're going to provide a PDF that they have that's editable, so I should be able to change the chart as we changes.
And I think that's what we had discussed in planning, that Haley said that would be difficult to do. So just for clarification purposes, just to, in case things aren't clear. So solar, as we took, we don't have any zoning for solar. Instead of saying solar all the time, we would just say what that ordinance is, whatever that ordinance number is. And it would just be referenced by them. That way, anyone who wanted to look it up has every opportunity to do that. We're not hiding anything. We're just not publicizing, hey, we've got a big hole in our zoning. Don't take advantage of us. I think that's the best for the community. And I think that covers all the bases. What do you think, Mr. Hall?
I don't really want to think. As they brought up, it's concerning.
Yeah.
It's brought up
in several different committees. So exactly. And so I think this is, and the reason it hasn't been done is because no one wants to advertise big hole in our zone. So therefore, I think this is a nice way to be able to do that. It should cover everything. It should give all the sunshine law regulations plenty of sunlight and still get it done. And we can just move on.
So somebody needs to hurry up.
So the other discussion, it had been brought to my attention that there was a chance that in previous commissions that they had done, members had done research, and that they could not find where any of our ordinances had actually been voted upon except that concerned me greatly. The only reason I'm bringing it up now is because, well, they just didn't dig deep enough or didn't look in the right places. Section 8 of the, excuse me, that's another section. Chapter 15.09 makes all zonings that were in effect when we became a metro. From that point forward, whether they were ever voted on before or not, if they were enforced and being used and on the books, from that point forward, they became law. So how they got on the books, whatever, doesn't matter at that point. I mean, that's set in the charter. It's right there, plainly written, that any laws that were one or the other are now laws for the Metro, Hartsville, Charleston. So if anyone had heard any rumors or any discussion about that at any point, that's where you can find it. That's where it became law. So it's been law for several years now. I still think that Rita is actually looking to go back because she just got curious. Because I only care that it's all legal now. We're here now. And she was curious on how the city did theirs, because like I said, all their stuff is resolutions. When did their stuff get put in place as far as zoning? And when did the county, because they were done at separate times. And so she's just looking for the historical on that. And so when I find more information about that. But for today and what we have in front of us, this is 100% voted upon, legal, established law in Charleston County. And so for there, that should answer those questions. That is something under discussion we can bring up. You and I had talked that the current zoning, the Cove restaurant is only supposed to be serving the Cove campground.
It's not supposed to accept or allow anybody outside the campground inside of the restaurant.
Personally, I believe that's the way the zoning's written. Campgrounds. They're supposed to only be serviced.
So you can, as a campground, you are allowed to have an establishment inside the campground, serve the campground tenants. They are not allowed to serve outside.
Personally, and like I said, this is my opinion. Y'all take it for what it's worth. I believe that is an undue burden on the establishment. Because there's no way that campground could ever be big enough to support a restaurant. I don't believe it could ever be.
There's lots of people.
Yeah.
He's got a good restaurant.
Yeah.
I know. Yes, I know.
I would.
So you've gone and stayed at the campground several times then?
I have
Hopefully
provided
not longer than 30 days.
But yeah.
for them to serve.
Yeah.
I mean,
So we need to look at adjusting that, in my opinion.
Yes.
can you do an exception or a variance, or is there some?
And that's what this discussion is. How would we approach presenting a suggestion to the full commission to change that? Because it would have to go before the full commission. Of course, anything would have to go for approval or disapproval by the planning commission, but the full commission has to vote on any change on this. I don't see where anyone would object to it.
I think we just say to add wording inside the campgrounds are not commercial.
So where's the ordinance?
And rest, it's inside your.
It's in front of me.
Yeah, I need more specific.
Yes.
So campgrounds are not commercial, so they're allowed a commercial business instead of a restaurant inside of them to service. We're allowing a commercial business inside and not.
We're doing a multi-zoning illegal. That's what we're allowed. So the multi-zoning that we had just discussed in the urban, we're allowing it to occur. You're living and operating a business in the same spot.
But we just need to add the wording.
I don't get the, I don't know why you.
Right, so nobody's like threatening to shut him down or anything, right?
Well, technically, legally, we have the right to do that.
But nobody's gonna do that, right?
I've already written to shut her down. So she's ignoring me.
Oh, yeah.
She's ignoring me. She is not providing for kids.
That's a whole side to it. But at the same time, but that's the campground side and the restaurant side. What we have to figure out here is how are we going to address this? Because anything we address in this particular instance can then be done anywhere else in the county.
I have not seen it. I did warn him to get his license that he is only allowed certain people.
Okay. We
But-
can fix that.
But the campground, it's state statutes on how long people live in the camper. Living in the camper is how long.
So what you have to do is every 30 days. You have to
And
Just
for a
say-
campground, not
Yes.
even a different campsite.
Yes.
I've heard both, but either way.
Yeah.
It's 30 days limit. And
Where about
some of
campground? Where-
In residential.
I'm just worried about his restaurant.
Yeah. And I knew that particular
Yes.
situation, he does.
Right.
And it's great for the community. I would love for him to have St. Apple event and him actually be in town. But I know that's why he's there, because it's cheaper.
nobody's complaining about it, so
It's not really a zoning violation until you're able. If you're looking for that, Sam, I also have an idea. As far as, I know there's an issue in residential where some residential occupants are wanting to have untraditional pets. And I think that if we were able to make that in a residential, some people are wanting to have what you would consider unconventional pets.
chickens.
I did not say that word.
Okay.
I said unconventional pets.
I know what's on my desk right now.
I know what I've been told not to say by our county attorney, so I
Okay.
said unconventional pets.
Okay. Go ahead.
And if we were able to say, maybe set a limit, that you're allowed X amount of those unconventional pets before it became considered an agricultural thing.
They're not allowed to have a roof.
You're not allowed to have a noise making pet that would be, an issue to your neighbors,
Here's the answer to your question.
and say maybe only 3 of those would count as a pet. Even more than that is.
Here's the answer. Here's the answer. All of that falls in the police department. The sheriff has to enforce all of that anywhere they can,
Or not do it at all.
or not do it at all. So no matter what we pass, it's dependent upon him enforcing it.
It is become a will, not necessarily a law.
For 2, it's simple. Chickens make noises. Well, there's a noise ordinance. If they were outside pets,
Roosters make noise. If you were looking at that type of non-traditional pet,
there is leash laws
there are.
that need to be enforced.
Yep.
If they're not being enforced, why is your chicken not on a leash?
Or duck, or
Duck.
yeah.
On a leash. There's leash laws out there, and something that the sheriff will have to enforce. They're already in existence. Now, it doesn't specifically point to a chicken or a duck. But it is something that can be claimed that animal is making excessive noise.
The only reason I bring it up is as we start hearing more and more news about food shortages and whatnot, and different, stuff with chemicals and genetic altering of things on commercial side.
Inside of the city limits, they should be in.
I completely agree with that.
Right.
But you can produce a lot of eggs off three chickens and not have to have a rooster that disturbs your neighbors. Ducks can do the same thing. And so it gives a way of someone in the urban, if the situation arises, to still be able to have that source of food and not be a burden on their neighbors if it's done properly.
Sure, you're behind. Yeah, chicken stick. So got three of them. Look, you got a map. They got it. Roll. I don't know. You might have
So I purposely did not add subdivision regulations to exactly. That's for planning commission. They have the authority for that. So I did not add that to our
okay, so I need to do some digging on that because I'm sure we have the authority to put something in place like that, but we need to understand all of that, whatever we do is outside of my scope job.
That is something we can bring up during planning and we can discuss it there and then maybe discuss it further on our next meeting.
I'm only concerned when they're dead.
Okay. Well, that's referring to the pets. I was referring still to the campgrounds. I think both.
Oh, okay. Campgrounds fall under me.
Yeah.
Pets fall under somebody else unless
that's still, the pets side falls under the commission on that. I didn't mean to mix. I just thought we'd kind of throw that idea out there real quick.
I sent the email out to all people that are involved in that building that is private. But I guess that is something that we probably have to scope, work on, and make a rule on it, and then put it back into the chair.
Yeah. And for full disclosure, my mother had as many as 8 kids in a pen behind her house in the middle of town. And her whole thing was she never kept a rooster, and any rooster she did have, as soon as he crowed the first time, that was Sunday dinner. And was able to just never had any complaints. She shared the eggs with her neighbors. They loved it. They got free eggs. There was no aggravation. There was never a violation called on my neighbor. And I can see some kids making just as much racket as 6 chickens will make. So I can see it all over the place. Kids don't. And I really like them taking care of my ticks, not having to pay a pest. Yeah, just saying. But no, we've got leash laws. And I agree with you, Sam. We already have stuff for pets with leash laws, which would keep them from free roaming, and would cause them to have to be pinned up. So, I mean, a lot of that is already in place. So I think then we'll just leave that conversation right where it's. So back to the campground. Have you had any luck tracking that down the analog way?
Yeah. It's a whole lot. I can't do it on my phone.
When we get done with this, I want to replace what's on the county website with what we do in a format that is easier to search than just a word search on PDF.
Yeah. I mean, I spend most of my time in my truck, and I have full ordinance up in my truck, and you cannot serve on your phone.
The only way I was able to go and tag stuff for utilities in a timely manner was Rosalie was nice enough to let me pull it up on your computer when you were at lunch one day. And yes, yours is so much faster. And just so that there were no issues, I made sure he opened everything and she closed everything.
I bought that computer so that I could do the searches in the truck calls. The only way I didn't realize at the time that the government phone is not like hotspot.
Yeah.
So
So you've got no internet in a lot of places.
there's no internet. So I can't, unless I get one of those cards to go in.
What's it your turn?
Second. Yeah, second. No one says otherwise, we are adjourned.
I will provide.
Yeah, we do need to.
Well, and not just for him, but for that circumstance.
Yeah.
I do think that's if you're running that as a campground and it is falling in a residential, then we need to, like you said, you've got a residential and a commercial on the same side. We have stopped other commercials from putting houses behind them or a camper behind them. We gotta be consistent with that, but that's.